Hey, what's up dudes, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another Dead by Daylight video. So, to end off the year this year, I wanted to rank every chapter that came out in 2021. Now, we're not going off of how Dead by Daylight does their chapter schedule. If we were doing that, then it would start at the anniversary and we'd go up from what's been released since the anniversary, but I want to stay specific and just do the entire year. So yes, we're technically counting the last chapter of year 5 and year 6, but it's just 2021. Also, apologies for the bad quality on some of these clips. Downloading your videos from YouTube, your VODs, because you don't have enough space on your computer to store 3-4 months worth of content, they really downscale the quality, so apologies for that. So, starting out at number 5, we have All Kill, the All Kill chapter that came with Yoongjin Lee and the Trickster. Now, the only reason this chapter is so low on my list is because of all the problems the killer has had since it's been out. There's been so many problems with balancing this character. He was decent in the PTB, then he got nerfed into Oblivion, and then he just recently got buffed into Oblivion, and then he got nerfed pretty decently back. I think the character's in an okay spot, but we're not ranking them on like how far they've come, really. I wanted to rank this kinda on how good they were at release, because, you know, that's how I rank my video games. How good are you on release, not how good were the devs able to make you. So, for that reason, this chapter gets number 5. Now, this chapter actually came with a lot of perks I love. The Trickster himself, he's a pretty fun killer now. Back before he got buffed, he was a nightmare to play, in my opinion, but regardless of that, he came with some really good perks that I actually use a lot. Starstruck and No Way Out. Those two perks I use on a few different builds. Starstruck mainly on a lot of my killers, like Mouse 1 killers, or killers who have the ability to like immediately know where you are after picking up a survivor and hooking them. So someone like Doctor, Trapper even, because people like to bully Trapper, and that's kind of like a mind game into it, like you stay too close, you want to bully me, I got Starstruck, so that works really well. As for the survivor, Yoongjin Lee, I really like the character. Going into the backstory, I think the lore is very interesting, and we got a little bit more of it with this recent tome, getting a little bit more of the backstory there, and I think it expanded it okay. There was a lot of missed potential there, and a lot of other people who are way better at talking about lore have already talked about it, but I think the backstory is good. But Yoongjin Lee's perks, though, I'll go ahead and say it, Fast Track is one of my favorite perks in the game. It ends up being a part of like my favorite build, the go ahead and do it build, which basically relies on them downing your teammates, hooking your teammates, you getting rewarded for them hooking your teammates, and then having borrowed time to safely unhook your teammates, Medal of Man to take the protection hit, and then I think we're gonna live forever for extra points for all of that. So it's the go ahead and do it build. Just go ahead, down them, hook them, I'll deal with you in a minute. So I love that perk. Smash Hit is a really fun exhaustion perk. It's not ridiculously overpowered, but it's not terrible. You know, if you're good at looping and if you're good at landing those pallet hits during a loop, then you're gonna do well with this perk. I think it's really good. The only thing that keeps the All Kill chapter from being way near the top is how it released. Moving on to our next chapter, though, it is the Resident Evil chapter. Now, I know this one might upset some people. For a lot of people, this was their favorite chapter of the year. I'm a huge Resident Evil fan, but this is another one of kind of the same things. When this chapter released, the game pretty much broke. Especially if you got the RPD map. It was almost unplayable for people on console, and for not most, but a majority of PC players, the map just completely broke their game. I never personally experienced any issues with frame rate, playing the map, etc., but it did get turned off a few times, I believe, and stayed off for a little bit. So the game didn't release, the chapter didn't release in the best state, and it did take a while to get fixed, which is why it's so low, despite Nemesis being such a fun killer. I don't know if people have like completely figured this character out or not. I still see him getting placed in like C tier and D tier, and even low B tier, and I really do think Nemesis is an A tier character. He's a very good killer in my opinion, especially if you get him going early game. If you get him going early game, it's almost a guaranteed victory unless you completely mess up. And not to mention, his perks are decent. Eruption is not a terrible perk, and it's useful in some situations on some characters like Freddy, in my opinion. Characters that can get around the map fairly quickly. It's pretty useless on a character like Huntress or Trickster, even a character that's very slow to get around the map. But if you're someone like Wraith or Freddy, Nurse, even Blight, then the perk can do you some good. And Lethal Pursuer is one of those hit or miss perks. It can be really good for some characters, and then it can just be a complete waste of a slot for others. And even when it does work on specific characters that it should work on, it can still end up being a waste of a perk slot, because after those 9 seconds are up at the very beginning of the game, you only have 3 perks. And as far as the survivors go, Jill and Leon with a bunch of skins, it's pretty cool. Leon's got some pretty fun perks like Flashbang and Bite the Bullet for a sneaky heal build, and I like it. I think they're both okay. They're decently fun perks. And Jill, Counterforce and Resurgence and Blast Mine. Again, Blast Mine is a goofy perk, you know, you can really be trolly with that, so it's enjoyable here and there. Resurgence, I'm not sure how I feel about it. It can get you healed pretty quick, or you can heal yourself pretty quick after getting hooked, but you know, you're trying to avoid getting hooked, but it still can be very useful. And Counterforce, it's one of those weird perks where it tries to be better than Small Game or Detective's Hunch, but never really ends up getting there, in my opinion, because it's so random at, you know, which totem it shows you. It's all the way across the map, so I'd just rather use a perk like Small Game, so I'd never really run this perk. But overall, the main thing keeping this chapter from being near the top as well is, unfortunately, the state it released in. Next up, we have my personal favorite chapter of the year, but it's Hellraiser. Came with the Cenobite and 3 new perks. It introduced a new perk type, and I think the chapter overall was a very interesting chapter. The only reason it's not at the top or number 1 or number 2 is because it didn't drop with a map or a survivor, and they had great potential to do that. They had an amazing map that they could have went with from Hellraiser 2 that got fleshed out, which is basically hell, and they had an amazing survivor potential in the form of Kirsty Cotton, and they just didn't do it. Big missed opportunity, and I doubt that's BHVR's fault, because I'm sure they probably wanted to do the whole thing, but it was more than likely Park Avenue Entertainment. And then there was, of course, the drama that came along with the chapter, and I know some people are going to be mad because this isn't on the very bottom, but I still think the chapter was decent. It introduced a new perk type, which was Scourge Hooks, and this one was Gift of Pain, which is a really fun perk in my opinion. I'm super happy that this chapter brought that in. Then we have Hex Plaything, another super fun perk in my opinion. It makes the survivors oblivious until they find the totem that is specifically theirs after they've been hooked. Now, if this worked to kind of get rid of boon totems a little bit, like you had to break the totem instead of blessing it, I think it'd be a way better perk, but again, they probably just need to balance out boon totems when it comes to that. And then Deadlock, a really fun perk as well. I don't think it's quite as meta as other people want to say it is, but it's still fun. And Pinhead himself is super fun to play in my opinion. Yeah, he's a little weak. He could definitely use some buffs in my opinion, even though people want him nerfed, and he actually did get nerfed against add-ons. I think he is a super fun character to play, if not a little bit stressful, but really fun with certain builds. Then our number 2 chapter is, yes, Michaela, Hour of the Witch. This character has single-handedly changed the entire meta of the game around with the 2 perks that she brought into the game, which was the Boon Circle of Healing and the Boon Shadow Step perk, which basically are just the boom perks. Completely changed the meta around for better or worse. I do think it's an interesting idea. I do think it's an interesting mechanic. I do think it can be very fun if it's balanced out. I do think it can be very interesting if it's balanced out. The state that it's in right now, it's not so much balanced. I'd like to see some more balance done with it, but it's still a lot of fun. It made me be able to have fun with Survivor for the first time in years. I'm usually a killer main, but the boom perks brought me back to Survivor to play more and play a lot. I actually pretty much became a Survivor main when this character came out. Had a lot of fun with it. And Clairvoyance, it's here or there. Whatever, you know. But Michaela herself, I really enjoy her design. I really enjoy her backstory, even if she is a TikTok witch, as coined by some good friends in the community. I do think she her overall design is interesting, her overall backstory is interesting, could use a little work, but I think that can be said for most characters in this game. And then of course, our last chapter, Portrait of a Murder. I think this chapter was incredible. It released an amazing, in my opinion, original killer with a new map, interesting perks for both sides, meta perks for both sides, in my opinion. The character design was on point for the artist. I think Jonah isn't a bad character. I mean, he's bad in his backstory, but I still think he's an interesting character. So overall, I think it was a good map. I think not the Forsaken Boneyard, but the Eyrie of the Crows, I think that is a really cool, well-designed map. I just love everything about the chapter. I love the killer. I love how she plays. I think she's very fun and very interesting. She's skill-based killer, so she takes some skill. She takes some time to learn. She takes some thought while you're playing her. She's not brain dead. Her perks, Grim Embrace, it's okay, but Scourge Hook, Pain Resonance is definitely, in my opinion, the best perk to come out of this bunch. Hex Pentimento, I remember it wasn't very hot like when the chapter first came out, but I've heard people like Ox have figured out how to make it a really good perk, so I need to check further into that. But Pain Resonance is definitely a perk that I signed up for when I played this character. I love that perk. I think it does very good to help you not have to run, not have to focus on so much gen slowdown perks like Hex Ruin and Undying and stuff like that, or even Pop, because you down the survivor if you're near a Scourge Hook, and most of the time you are, there's a little bit of gen regression. And when it comes to Jonah, Corrective Action is a goofy but fun perk. Overcome is a really good exhaustion perk. I've been having a lot of fun with it. It's useful in a lot of situations. And Boon Exponential, I mean, it's Boon Unbreakable, dude. It's a really good perk. Now, of course, the survivor perks, in my opinion, are way stronger than the killer perks, and that's just as per usual, but I think all the perks are fun and interesting from this chapter. And like I said, the map, I love the design, I love the aesthetic, I love the aesthetic of the overall chapter in general. It's incredible in my opinion, and it deserves the #1 chapter of 2021 for Dead by Daylight. But I want you guys to let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm very interested to hear what you guys have to say. Thank you all so much for watching. This was a lot of fun to make. Thank you guys for an amazing few months near the end of the year, because I started late. You guys are incredible. I look forward to this year getting started out with a Ringu chapter coming out in March. So very much look forward to all of that. Thank you guys all so much. I love you. Happy New Year, and I'll see you dudes in the fog. Peace out.